So this week's movie is a small little movie, but it's a good little movie called Blaze. You know, so musical biopics, they are a staple of Hollywood. And we often get movies like Walk the Line about Johnny Cash or Ray Charles, Lady Sings the Blues. I mean, they're all these very famous, popular movies about famous, popular entertainers. What's happening in Blaze is we're seeing a movie about a guy who never made it big. It's a musical biopic about a guy that you probably have never heard of unless you're really deep into country music. And that is the challenge that Ethan Hawke placed upon himself. Ethan Hawke is the writer and director, and his philosophy I think is a fascinating one, which is, 95% of musicians and 95% of artists anywhere don't make it, and yet they continue to trudge along with their life and they make their art, and then they die, and maybe they die, ignominiously or just anonymously. Their lives matter too, and so he's decided to make a movie about a guy who most of us haven't heard of. His name is Blaze Foley. That's why the movie's called Blaze. He died at the age of 39 in 1989, so he hasn't been around for like 30 years. But he's like a country blues singer, and he did he sort of honed his craft, but he never made it big. He kept trying with various record companies. Things never really panned out, and then he died way too young in a really unnecessary way. It's a sad and kind of tragic story, but that's not what the story is about. It's not about his death, his untimely death. It's about what it's like to try to make it in this world and never giving up. Blaze Foley is an incredible talent that never was recognized, and yet in the 30 years since his death, he's slowly been his profile has been rising. Big stars like Merle Haggard and Lyle Lovett and others have recorded some of his songs, and he's starting to become more and more known and better known. One of the interesting things about this in the movie, just to kind of set you up for the movie, at one point, Blaze Foley's girlfriend/wife asks him, "So, do you want to become a star? Are you ever going to become a star?" And he says, "I don't care about being a star. I wants to be a legend."
I don't want to be a star. I wants to be a legend.
And interestingly enough, that might be what's happening, because there have been posthumous albums released of his material, and again, he still hasn't risen to the level of general populace, but more and more people are recognizing him. And this movie is a way to introduce you to his music. The movie weaves very interestingly and cleverly about maybe 15 or 16 of his songs that again I had never heard before, but now I'm getting to love them because I'm playing them over and over and over again. Now, what's the key to a movie about any kind of musician? You got to get a good actor, somebody who can really do it. And Ethan Hawke went out on a limb and cast an unknown, much like Blaze Foley, a guy named Ben Dickey. He's about 40 years old. He's a singer-songwriter from the Deep South. He was born in Arkansas and has hung around the South for much of his life. He is a performer, and he was cast in a first-time acting gig. He plays Blaze Foley, and he's very good. He's very winning. He manages to play the two sides you hear about Blaze Foley, that he was this genial bear of a man. He's like 6'4" or something. He's a big, tall guy. He's kind of a friendly guy who will do anything for anybody. At the same time, he drank a lot, and when he got drunk, he became kind of a lout, kind of a jerk, and there are these two sides of him, and I think that Ben Dickey does a really good job of capturing that. But that's not why he was cast. He was cast because he is very convincing as a guy who's struggling to make his life, making his way in the world with his music, and he has masterfully perfected all these various songs by Blaze Foley. It's very impressive work. Now, the one thing that's a little weird, most biopics, you see the rise of stardom, and then they reach the top, and then they have complications. Maybe they plunge to the bottom, but at least there's a kind of natural narrative arc. Well, when a guy is this kind of a failure of a guy who just sort of drifts through life and then dies in an untimely fashion, what are you going to do? Well, you don't have this narrative arc to follow, so what Ethan Hawke does, he jumbles a bunch of time frames up, so he keeps jumping around. it makes for kind of a frustrating movie experience, but then I think the life of Blaze Foley was probably kind of a tough experience a tough life to experience anyway, and he kind of captures that. He presents things not to create a storyline. He positions images and scenes to create kind of character insights into him, and that's ultimately, I think, the justification for this movie. The coolest thing, though, for me is that it introduces me to a guy I'd never heard of. I think Ben Dickey is very good. I love listening to Ben Dickey's versions of Blaze Foley's songs, but ultimately for me, it's turned me into a music fan. I'm not a country guy as a rule, but I've been listening to Blaze Foley for like the last 3 or 4 weeks. I love his music, and if this movie hadn't come out, I, like most of us, would still never heard of Blaze Foley. All of my movie reviews are brought to you by Red Wind Casino. See them here first on the KIRO Radio Facebook page and find all of them at mynorthwest.com.